I couldn't ask for a better day than today. You know what? We're on this side of the ground, and I think that's a pretty good thing. I'm excited. Hey, Jeffrey. Hey, tell us a little bit about. Give us your name and a little bit about what you do over at ATRI.
All right, I am Jeffrey Short from the American Transportation Research Institute. I've been working for ATRI. I've been with ATRI for 17 years. So I graduated from college, and I met Rebecca Brewster and moved into the industry. I didn't think I would be working in the industry. I always was interested in transportation, of course. But then I've worked through various roles at ATRI, working on tons of different research studies, anything from safety culture to highway funding. And I've done a lot of work in highway funding. And this project we're going to discuss today, this research paper, is on that topic.
Boy, that highway funding, it's, we spoke a little bit about this before the show started. It hadn't changed since 1993. And with the, not only the fuel economies that now happen with cars and trucks, now we throw in these other two bogeys, right? The hybrid and that electric vehicle that's roaming the highways today, not paying, in my mind, or probably anybody's mind, any tax or their fair share. Talk to us a little bit about that.
That's correct, Rick. At the federal level, there have been a lot of discussions of putting a tracking device on every vehicle in the United States and saying, how many miles do you drive? And let's charge you for that. And we did a report earlier this year that found, 50% of that, 50% of the gross revenue from such a program would be going towards the collection, towards interacting with every single American who drives and charging them a fee. And we said, you know what, this doesn't make any sense. What are the motivations for it? And like you said, the tax hasn't increased. Fuel economy has improved, so less gasoline is being consumed per vehicle. And then you throw in this rapid increase in electric vehicles. So that's what we focused on. That third piece is electric vehicles, in particular, a battery electric vehicle, the kind of vehicle that consumes zero gasoline. It has no internal combustion engine. They pay zero taxes into the Highway Trust Fund from fuel taxes because they don't use any fuel.
Yeah. So when we so for those of you who are watching us right now, we think about the federal level, right, on the gasoline for the Highway Trust Fund, 18.4 cents a gallon for gasoline. On that diesel, 24.4 cents. And we're not talking the local, the state, some of the state tax and like that. But on the federal, 24.4 cents on the diesel. And these electric vehicles, to your point, zero. Right? They're not consuming any. Zero because they're running the batteries and as opposed to the gasoline.
Yep.
And I thought
the good news. Go on.
No, you're good. You're probably going to talk about the same thing. I thought it was interesting when we go to the that hybrid vehicle when we talk about the Prius, right? In the study, you talked specifically about the Prius, about how they have, although it's not 100% electric, because of how they run that hybrid vehicle, it had a 52 miles per gallon rating, nearly half as much fuel as a normal, a standard vehicle runs today. Runs the same miles, just not paying any tax towards our highway fund.
That's correct. A hybrid vehicle pays a lot less. And then you have the plug-in hybrids, which still use gasoline, and you could conceivably just run them off gasoline, but the first 20, 30, 40 miles can be electric. And then you go to the battery electric vehicles. They run entirely on electricity. The good news right now is that there are only 1 million of these on the road. The bad news is that BEVs, battery electric vehicles, not paying any taxes, that causes a deficit at the federal level of 90 million a year. Now you also have the popularity of these BEVs increasing rapidly. You've got sales rising. You've got states like New York saying, we're no longer, by 2035, we're no longer going to allow you to sell a brand new internal combustion engine gasoline car in this state. there is a push towards these electric vehicles, and a lot of manufacturers are moving into this space. So we took all of that into consideration, crunched some data, and found that there would be 15 million by the end of this decade, 15 million battery electric vehicles. And that would equate to more than $1 billion deficit per year. In total, this decade, that's $4.3 billion that are lost, that aren't going towards highways that should be.
Yeah, and and I'm going to go into that because you talk about the vehicles today. So for you listening to me out there that are watching the show, you know that I love numbers, and these are small numbers that really grow big. We have 11,599 miles that a vehicle normally travels, using about 464 gallons. Okay, so what's the big deal? It's only $85 annually a year for a vehicle in taxes. $85. What are you talking about? Well, when there's 1.8 or 1.9 million vehicles running, that's $92 million a year that these highways aren't getting funded for. And again, we talked earlier too about the big truck, and not just the big truck, but the car. On how we have, with everything, we've gotten a lot better at fuel economy. And when we haven't changed since 1993, there's no doubt that our highways, they're not getting funded. And I love the way you're doing this here, and I want you to talk a little bit. I mean, how are we going to, if we went with the EFT, I mean, how would we manage that? Would that be peak, off peak, where there's different charges for when we're charging our vehicles, or what? How does that work?
Certainly, that's possible. As many of you know, for the fuel tax, for the federal fuel tax, they charge that tax not at the pump. They don't come to you individually and say, "I'd like that tax." They go directly to the companies that put it out on the market, and that's really 3,000 collection points. It's a couple hundred companies. Think big oil companies, big oil distributors, that sort of thing. With the utilities, there are also roughly 3,000 utilities in the United States. What a great place to have as a collection point. Now, the next question is, can the utilities track how much is going into cars and then assess that tax? And I think there's a good argument for their ability to do that. I think with public charging, you've got really rapid public chargers that put in direct current 480 volts. Obviously, the utilities can spot those on their grid and can assess a charge. They're only used for one purpose. Same with the public chargers. This tax, which let's say we roughly estimate at 2.1 cents per kilowatt hour. That's about 59 cents per 100 miles driven for a typical battery electric vehicle. We think all public chargers could be spotted easily. Now, when we get to residential, that's a little trickier.
So, Jeff, I actually had a quick question for you before I give it back to just you and Rick here. So I know that you mentioned some of these electrical grids being able to take notice of when they're getting huge charges going on at these charging stations. Do you foresee any additional infrastructure needing to be put into place in order to implement this tax onto electric vehicles, or would this be something that we can already do?
Well, if there are sub-meters out there, it certainly could be implemented. The utilities would simply have to identify those locations that are using just electricity for just transportation, and that conceivably could be done all automatically by computers, assessed, paid, and collected by the utilities. When we get to residential, it's a little trickier. So would additional technology or infrastructure be needed? I think that is likely the case. Now, if you look at, I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and the power company here has a program where if you have a smart charger and you have a smart meter on your home, and everyone does have a smart meter in Atlanta, those two can connect. They can talk to each other. They can time when electricity is flowing to the car, and therefore they know when how much electricity is flowing to the car. And that right there allows them to know exactly how many kilowatt hours are going out, and thus how much an electric vehicle user should pay in taxes. So that's very promising technology. It could develop further from there, or it could be just a tax for that type of charging, because the cost of electricity off peak when you use smart chargers is so much less.
Gotcha. Hey, so at the ATRI, you do all of this work, right? And you provide it out, and it gets published, everything. I mean, it's all over Transport Topics. It was in our conversations at the at some of the trucking meetings, even at insurance meetings. It's a big subject right now. How long does something like this, I mean, you do all of this, okay, now what? Do you sit there and wait? Do you go into more studies? What happens now?
It's always possible that a follow-on study could be brought to us through our research advisory committee, where we look further into what technologies would be necessary and that sort of thing. The research is out there. It's out there. It's free on our website. Anyone can access it. And we hope people look at it and say, hey, these numbers actually make sense. And the vehicle miles traveled numbers, they don't make as much sense. It's really expensive to put that level of tracking, not to mention the privacy component of it. To put a vehicle miles traveled tax out there would be very expensive, but this is a much cheaper alternative, and I think the numbers speak for themselves in the report. So hope lots of folks have downloaded the report. Lots of folks from a variety of places, anywhere from government to energy companies to trucking companies.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. You know, putting tracking on your kids, on their vehicles, that's tough enough. I can't imagine the challenge on doing that to the adults. I mean, that may shut down this country again, alone, the threat of that. So, no, great point on that. Hey, just a quick question or just a comment here. Tell our folks that watch this show, when they want to, how do they participate in some more of these studies? We're big proponents. We love pushing ATRI. Tell us how to find you and how to participate in more of these studies.
Our website is the best way to start, and that is www.truckingresearch.org. And there you will find our latest reports. You will find opportunities to voice your opinion in surveys that we have. We just closed our top industry issues survey, but that comes out every year. That's the type of thing that anyone who is part of the trucking industry can take that and say, these are my top issues. This is what I am most concerned about. And we rank that. And at the end of this month, actually, we're going to be putting out that top industry issues report. So again, the best way is to start at our website, truckingresearch.org.
Hey, Jeffrey, I want to thank you for joining BCB Live. I love what you do over there. I love ATRI. I love all that you stand for. It's great information. It's research. And you know what? It does require participation from you out there driving. So many of these of the research involves what you're doing. Get involved in your industry. Get involved with ATRI. Participate for the first time or continue to participate. Hey, Jeffrey, thanks a lot for joining us on BCB Live, the safest station in the nation.
Thanks a lot, Rick. I appreciate it.
No, I
Have
appreciate
a good day.
Thank you, buddy.